So we're here today in the backflow testers training lab, and this time we'll be testing the spill resistant vacuum breaker. It's kind of like the pressure vacuum breaker, but what it doesn't do is dump water out of the top. So these can be used indoors. So the first thing we're gonna do, like we do with all devices, is we're gonna notify the customer we're on site, we're on their property, we'll be testing their backflow, and that we'll have their water turned off for a little while while we're conducting this test. Next, we want to identify the unit. This is a spill proof, or SVB. It's a 3/4 LF008, and the serial number. All that stuff we want to annotate on our test sheets, okay? Then you want to identify or inspect the unit for any kind of leaking test cocks or anything. Shut-off valves are there, and in the position they're in, because we want to leave them in the same position as we found them when we leave. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to check our meter. Again, we're using the Midwest 830. The valves are marked and identifiable. We want to check our meters, make sure all of our valves are closed, and get ready for test. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to flush our test cocks. There's no particular order in these. So the SVB, unlike the pressure vacuum breaker, only has one test cock, but it does have a air inlet screw on the side, so you'll need to bleed it as well. So you'll just open the test cock, you want to flush it, make sure you get water flowing out. Then you want to open this vent screw on the side. Okay, and all I'm looking for is some water, some leakage coming out of it. All right, we got that going. So we'll close it back. So everything's good, we flushed. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to attach our test hose, high pressure hose, to the number one test cock. Okay. We want to make sure all of our unused hoses are wrapped around the face of our gauge again, and our gauge is at the same height. Our middle of the face gauge is the same height at the top of the assembly. All right. So once we get our hose hooked up, we want to open that test cock, and we want to flush our meter. Make sure we get all the air out of it through this assembly and out of the meter. Once the meter pegs out, we can close the high side bleed valve. Okay. Then we're going to shut off valve number two. Then we shut off valve number one. Okay. Once we get that closed, what we're going to do now is we're going to get the check valve seating point. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this air inlet screw on the side, and we're not going to take it all the way out right off the bat. Okay. We need to loosen it a little bit, start to get some water drain out of it. You need to watch your meter. All right, so you want to get this kind of loose. Again, not taking it out all the way right off the bat. Just get it kind of loose, get some water draining, relieve some of that pressure. Kind of wiggle it around a little bit so you get that water running. Again, not to remove it all the way. And you'll notice the gauge will start falling. Once our gauge gets between 8 and 7 PSID, then we want to go ahead and remove the screw all the way, so that's where it's at, and then remove it all the way. Okay? So once that water stops leaking out of the side of the vent valve, and the needle has stopped, that means our check valve is seated. It's approximately 4.0. We want to write that on our test sheet, the check valve seated at 4.0. Okay? So the next thing is I want to get my air inlet valve opening point. Okay? And that's going to be on the top here. So we're going to reach up here and we're going to open our high bleed no more than 1/4 of a turn. All right? So we'll open that 1/4 of a turn, and you notice the needle starts dropping again on the meter. And what I'm looking for is once the water starts running out of the side of the vent valve over here again, that's my air inlet opening point, which was about 1.0. Okay? You need to kind of be watching this because again, it can get kind of fast and get past you. But that was at 1.0. All right? Once you've done that, you want to make sure you put your vent valve screw back in. Close your test cocks. Remove your high side hose. You want to recharge or open shut off valve number one. Open shut off valve number two to restore pressure to the customer. Open your valves on your test kit for travel. And that concludes this test.